All right, so one of the first questions I had when I was done watching Black Panther Wakanda Forever was, what the heck was in that original script? I was very curious because like he'd finished the script and then Chadwick Boseman passed away.
Right.
And I'm like, what was in that story? Like, what would that have been like? I saw that my brother had reacted to this and immediately I was like, oh, I gotta know, you know, what Heavy Spoilers has to say about this because I'm very, very curious about that original story. If you guys are curious too, and you haven't already watched Greg's video, the Real Rejects video, then come join us on this adventure with this Heavy Spoilers video. Thanks for being here. Hit that subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, vote this up, let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. If you are, and if you're not, I don't know why you're watching this. Anyway, here we go.
Okay, so Wakanda Forever's original script is something I think it's impossible not to wonder about in the wake of the movie's release. Due to Chadwick Boseman's death, the production was massively changed, with Ryan Coogler having to deal with the monumentous task of rewriting the entire thing from the ground up because of the actor's passing. However, due to interviews and the Black Panther Wakanda Forever podcast, we now have a fair idea of what was going to be in it. In this video, we're going to be going through everything we know was in the original plan, and also our general thoughts about it. There may be some spoilers here in regards to the final film, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out, then please check out now.
Yeah, do that.
If you enjoy the video, we'd love you 3,000 if you hit the thumbs up button.
When are we going to watch it?
Subscribe for breakdowns like this every day. Without the way, I'm your host Paul. Now let's get into our original Wakanda Forever script breakdown.
This channel's literally called Heavy Spoilers.
Looms largely over the film, with Coogler stating that he and the cast put their love and grief into every aspect of the movie. The Weekly Planet recently touched upon what the director experienced when finishing the first draft, and we now know from the official Black Panther podcast that Coogler actually sent this off to Chadwick.
The Weekly Planet is one of my favorite YouTube channels, that duo.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always watching their caravan of garbage videos. In fact, I watched one this morning about V for Vendetta. I love their videos. If you guys haven't seen their channel, you should definitely check it out.
When discussing the script, he said, "I had just finished it. My last conversation with him was calling him and asking if he wanted to read it before I got notes from the studio. That was the last time we spoke, and he passed maybe a couple of weeks after I finished." Coogler has since gone on to say that though he never suspected Chadwick had cancer at the time, in retrospect he could tell something was off. During the filming of the first movie, he stated that Chadwick would seem tired from time to time, and that he'd need to take breaks more often than usual on some days. We now know what Chadwick was battling with, and looking at his performance, it's actually incredible that he got through it all with the pain that he was in. Now when discussing their last conversation, Coogler said, "He was tired. I could tell he was tired. I'd been trying to get hold of him for a few days. I could tell something was up. But he was joking and laughing, talking about how he was planning a wedding in South Carolina, talking about the people he was going to invite. And then he said he didn't want to read it because he didn't want to get in the way of whatever notes the studio might have. So he was like, it's better if I read it later. But I found out later that he was too tired to read anything." It's devastating to find this out, and it's clear that he influenced how they handled T'Challa's passing due to him fighting his disease in secret. CBR recently reported that Chadwick did in fact get the chance to read it though, and that Letitia Wright heard through the grapevine that the actor had been making fun of how long it was. He'd been joking that it was over 300 pages, which would make it one of the longest MCU movies ever.
What?
Yeah.
What? 300 pages?
So it like...
One page per minute. That's so over like, 4 hours.
Wow.
Well, 240 minutes would be 4 hours. And so that's 5 hours. I mean, obviously these things get cut down. Writers can write to their heart's content and then it gets chopped to pieces until you get like the best of that stuff. Like James Cameron does the same thing where he'll write hordes of pages, but then it'll have to get whittled way down. Like the original cut of Terminator 2 Judgment Day was like 3 hours long. The original cut of Titanic was like 4.5 hours long. There's like a lot of ideas that they're just sort of, what do you call it? Vomiting on the page, right? And then they just cut out all the mess and all the noise until they get to like the heart of it.
The streamlined version.
Which would make it one of the longest MCU movies ever. This carries over to the final version too, with it clocking in at 2 hours and 41 minutes. Interestingly though, we now know that the original version also dealt with the themes of grief too. In an interview with Inverse, Coogler laid out the entire plan, and the first thing he talked about was the grief that the movie tackled with. However, this was T'Challa dealing with his own grief of the snap and the time that was lost. When Thanos snapped away half of all life in the universe, T'Challa was one of the unlucky ones that were taken, and this would have left the throne empty for 5 years. Coogler said that the movie was going to address this directly, and that its tone would be similar to what we got in the final release. When going over this, Ryan said, the character was going to be grieving the loss of time, you know, coming back after being gone for 5 years. As a man with so much responsibility to many, coming back after a forced 5 years away, that's what the film was tackling. He was grieving time he couldn't get back, grief was a big part of it.
That's interesting. I mean, Ant-Man kind of dealt with that a little bit because he lost all that time with his daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen him overtly talk about that yet, but I think we can assume it.
Yeah.
Because the last time he saw his daughter, she was like a kid, and then she was a grown up, and he's like confused, and that kind of like messed with his head.
Well, yeah, I can imagine as a parent, like time is so precious, and losing 5 years with your kid, she's probably very close to that age where she's going to leave home. It's time that you can never get back.
Exactly.
Coogler stated that Shuri was snapped away too, and that they would both return with this feeling of loss. Now, personally, I feel one of the big flaws in the MCU at the moment is that we haven't really dealt with what happened in those 5 years.
Yeah.
There's been minor moments like the Ronin plot in the Disney Plus Hawkeye show, but beyond that, it's something we know very little about. It's meant to be a completely depressing
They kind of dealt with it in WandaVision a little bit.
WandaVision saying they had to do dark things in order to survive.
Yeah.
This ended up making him work to bring Vision back to life so that planet Earth had its own protector. Coogler said that Wakanda Forever would tackle this idea too, and that an element of the final film was laced throughout this early draft. In that we watch as France attempts to steal vibranium from the Wakandans at one of their research labs. The original script had elements of this as well, with the fact that T'Challa was gone for 5 years, causing big issues.
Yeah,
because the kingdom didn't have a Black Panther to protect it, several government entities had tried to intrude and attack in order to gain the precious material for themselves.
Seems like a lot of elements are still there
destroyed
from
all
the
of the
original
sacred
script.
herbs, and because of this, they couldn't pass the mantle on to anyone else. The nation had no protector, and this put even more guilt onto the shoulders of T'Challa.
Oh, wow.
He
Yeah.
returned to find Wakanda in the midst of a cold war with the UN, desperate to gain vibranium. The film, of course, ended with T'Challa opening up Wakanda to the world, and he would have to deal with the fact that they had betrayed him. Though Michael B. Jordan's return isn't mentioned in any of the interviews, I think this is because of spoilers that it could bring to people going to see the film. However, I think that he would have appeared in the film in some form or another. He wanted to take the fight to the world and make Wakanda known through the use of force. T'Challa, on the other hand, wanted it to be peaceful, and I can't help but think seeing #Killmonger was right might make him question his own leadership abilities. T'Challa was very much forced into being king by the sudden death of his father, and though he beat M'Baku for the throne, his reign had been marked by a lot of turmoil. We of course had Killmonger usurping him, and then Thanos attacking Wakanda. So it's a lot to deal with, and him failing to protect his nation would be another big thing that I think would have added to the guilt.
Yeah.
And the villain of the movie was always going to be Namor, with Coogler stating that he was always the antagonist. Black Panther and Namor have fought several times in the comics before, with both Atlantis and Wakanda going to war with each other. In the comics, Namor and T'Challa's rivalry was first introduced in the 1970s, but when we look at the timeline of the Marvel Universe, they fought long before that. The first battle happened during World War II, and over the decades they've had an uneasy alliance that's constantly broken. There's been several tense exchanges with them, and pretty much every time they talk, there's a chance things could kick off. Black Panther and Namor are some of the only Marvel characters that are actually rulers, and it's not like when Iron Man attacks somewhere because he isn't the leader of a country. They, however, are, and therefore every act is seen as something that can destabilize the peace on the political landscape.
There's a masochistic part of me that would have loved to have seen that 4.5-hour version of Black Panther 2 with T'Challa. Everything they're talking about is very, very interesting. What's cool about what's being revealed here is how many of the elements were carried over from that original script. How Ryan Coogler was able to repurpose a lot of those ideas into this other version of the film. I stand by my opinion that it's a very, very strong movie in spite of, what we lost. I think that obviously we all would have preferred to have had the T'Challa version of Black Panther 2. I think all of us across the board would have rather had that, but we got what we got, and I think that it was very strong for what it was. That being said, I would have loved to have seen this. This 4.5-hour version, I would have sat there and just popcorn that up. Give me a break in between. I think we need to bring back the pee break.
The intermission.
The intermission.
Yeah,
I think we need to bring that back.
Refill your popcorn, have a pee, get some more drink,
these
sit down.
Big ass soda cups that they have at the theater now. Are you kidding me? I can't even get through it. I'm scared. I'm fearful that I'm going to have to pee in the middle of this 2-hour and 40-minute movie.
You have to do math.
Interestingly, Shuri and Namor fought each other during Civil War II, which may have provided basis for the final cut. The tidal wave scene was there too, with this being a major attack that Namor launched. Because of this, I'm guessing that Ramonda died in the original version of the script, with that starting a streak of vengeance within the King T'Challa. The final release ends with Shuri realizing that vengeance is consuming her, and this is a line that calls back to T'Challa saying it in Civil War. I think that a similar motif might have happened once more, with T'Challa again realizing that this will just start a cycle of violence. M'Baku warns of Wakanda and Talokan devolving into nations of eternal war, which I think may have been a theme that was apparent in the original version. I do think that by the sounds of it, the basic backbone of the film would have been the same, with T'Challa questioning his leadership, which does get replaced by Shuri questioning her own skills and abilities. To her, the fact that she couldn't make a herb is her basically thinking that she led to his death, and no, that's not the case. I think this motif would have mirrored the failure T'Challa felt about his own kingdom. Unfortunately, we'll never know what the original script would have played out like due to the death of Chadwick Boseman, but I personally think that the final result perfectly handles his passing. Grief is a central theme to it, and it drives the characters and their actions in the movie. Though T'Challa is gone, his presence is felt throughout, and we of course end knowing that his legacy carries on. Either way, there's lots to unpack from this, and obviously let me know your thoughts on the script details and your general thoughts on the movie too.
You know, the thing that I found really interesting about this was just knowing that grief was already a central theme even before Chadwick Boseman's passing. I can see how he was able to kind of repurpose that original story, the original theme that he was going for, and just kind of really make it work for, you know, what happened. And use that to channel his grief.
I'm impressed by the same thing. Heavy Spoilers did a really good job of kind of summarizing everything that Ryan Coogler had been going through. Because everything he said, in the first 3 minutes, I was very well aware of, and I communicated that to you. You know, I mean, he may have gone into it with a nicer accent than I have, but it was cool how he was able to, in case you didn't know, this is what was going on with Ryan Coogler and Chadwick Boseman, etc. And then going into the nitty-gritty of that original script, I thought he did a good job of bringing in those elements and, you know, showing us the comic panels to help us visualize what that all meant and like where Ryan Coogler might have been drawing inspiration from, etc. That sounds like it would have been an amazing movie. I think that we still got, all things considered, an amazing movie. But that would have been just banana town. It's too bad we'll never see it, but at least we can imagine what that would have been like.
I really like the creativity behind that idea as well, because like you said, it isn't something that they've really explored in the MCU. Like, we all know that after the snap, people were gone for 5 years.
I didn't say that, he said that, but yeah.
But no one has really taken the time to really explore what happened during those 5 years. It's kind of been something that's been glossed over or done really quickly.
Sure. I mean, I was saying the opposite, where I felt like we have seen it touched upon a few times. Monica Rambeau.
It's touched upon.
Sure. I don't know if I needed it to like deep dive, you know, but like that would have been an interesting, you know, personal journey of him dealing with the guilt of having been gone for 5 years. I mean, Monica Rambeau, we saw her introduction where she lost her mom or something like that. Like it's you know, been brought up a few times, but I guess you're right. Like, and Heavy Spoilers equally right. It hasn't been deeply explored.
Like deeply explored. So, I'm interested in that.
But anyway, you guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Do subscribe, bell icon, all notifications, vote this up. I'm Jabby Kuwait. This is
Achara Cook.
Peace out.